Coming up last, but certainly not least, here in the live lounge. Welcome everyone to PF International. My name's Chris McCarthy, your host. Coming up last, probably the busiest team owner of the weekend. Also a two-times Kartmasters winner in 2007 and 2008 in the Rotax 177 class. Dan Holland. Dan, thanks for taking the time to join us. I know we've had to wait for the racing to end because you've just got so many drivers out there. How many is it in total? 22 is it in total?
I think as overall karts in the tent, some of the guys are doubling up in classes. So I think there's 16, but there's some guys doubling up for a bit of fun.
How's it going? I mean, how do you get your head around running that many karts?
Yeah, for sure it's a lot. We're used to running a lot. We've got a lot of staff. I think that's the key.
Yeah.
We've got two trucks, lots of tents and lots of staff and good experienced staff. So we've been two teams for the last few years with the X30 side and the Rotax side, and we've come together this week. So we whilst it looks a lot, there's a lot of people in there running it. So everyone's got doing the data and still. So there's still good time, but it is. Yeah, I'm still keen to watch every race, even though I'm not perhaps managing those drivers. So, yeah.
It's a good approach to take. We're at the end of the second day now where we're running the new format. So, yeah, I guess this is where now we build up to finals day. How do you feel it's gone as a team for you guys?
Solid, if not spectacular. I think speed has been good in every class. I think the mixed heat format, I love that. I think I'm from the old school of mixed heats. So I think it's a perfect format with a time qualifying, which benefits the guys who are very good on that new tyre and good to get the clear laps in. But then the racing, it helps the guys who perhaps aren't the fastest, but very good at racing and come through. So we've seen quite a few shifts on the grid today. Most of our guys have done well. There's been a few incidents, but generally solid, and they've put themselves in a good place for tomorrow.
Well, let's move on to when you raced at Kartmasters. We're talking of My Road to Victory. That's our theme for the live lounge here. So you raced Kartmasters, well, you won Kartmasters 2007, 2008 in the Rotax 177 class. It was a big class at the time. Let's go back to 2007. Do you remember much about racing in the class that year?
Yeah, I do. It was my first year back after probably a 3 or 4 year break. Literally because of my size and my age and everything like that, I grew and I sort of outgrew the Rotax category. When 177 come along, I felt it was made for me, like category wise, and I could compete on an equal level again. So I really enjoyed my racing in 07, 08, and I do remember a lot about 07. And I think there was a rain shower just before the final in 07. Right. I think that was that year.
Yeah, so how do you approach that as a driver going in?
I think it had been dry the whole meeting, and we had a sudden downpour just before the final. Last minute rush. My dad was my mechanic, as he always had been, and we had a last minute rush on the grid. But we had good help. We ran with Paul Car Racing in 07 and 08, and that was really good. We had a good relationship. And it was just last minute calls on the pressure. I remember specifically I felt it wasn't right. It was a really tough race. It rained hard and then it sort of stopped and then it come back again. We'd already set the pressures perhaps for a drying track and it come back again. But thankfully, it was tough, but as the race went on, it got better and better. It come back to us, so it was good.
It must have been tough dealing with that as a driver out there when the pressure's already done, you can't do nothing about it.
It's one of those where it's more satisfying as well. So, if you win when you don't think you were quite fast enough or perhaps the kart wasn't perfect, those races and results for me was more satisfying than winning by umpteen seconds. So in the end it come good. It was just a case of being patient and keeping your head, which we try and tell our drivers all the time that now is just it's a long race, especially these Kartmasters finals.
Do you remember who you beat to the flag in those years, or who you were racing against?
I can't remember the 07 one. No, I don't. I definitely remember the 08 one. I can't remember.
So who was around in 08 then? Who were you racing?
In 08, for me, the standard stepped up a little bit. I think because 07 was the first year back and on the national scale. 08 it stepped up a lot. There was more competitors and a younger driver come back into it. I think it was always known as perhaps a bit of a not quite a masters class, but a little bit more mature. And then 08 was really much harder year, more competitive. In 08 it was I think Harry Cockhill, who went on to win the British Championship year after.
I remember him.
Lucas Orrock, I think he was second to me and pushed me really close in the final that year. I think they were the main two in 08.
So do you remember much of that final?
I think. I'm trying to. It was close with the British Champs or the Super One, which was back then as well. But I think that one I just sort of edged away in the dry. That one from Lucas, but it was. It was really. I remember looking over my shoulder like a couple of minutes. He was sort of there or thereabouts. 5 minutes in, I felt like he was closer, and I was like, oh God, and looked behind again, and then I started going, and I just, as the race went on, I sensed I was going, and that was it. Once I got into a rhythm, and yeah, even today we've seen it's quite difficult for the leaders. They always sort of are a lot slower than the mid pack, and then gradually as the race goes on, the track's improving, and those leading pack can go fast. But it's just about managing it at the start. So yeah, that was. Yeah, it was again. That was a very different race from the year before, but you know, satisfying nonetheless.
So yeah, which one was more satisfying? Would you say, was it 07 or 08?
I think 08 to sort of retain it and do it again in the dry, and I felt it was a harder field. I would have said in 08. 07 was tough because perhaps the kart wasn't perfect in that final, but yeah, I still think 08 just because I felt everyone was equal. I'd got all the time in the world to set the karts up. It was full dry the whole meeting, and did the business.
And before we come on to our question of the day, just tell us how it felt to win Kartmasters coming across the line, how it felt to win that GP plate.
Yeah, it's great. I think I'd love to have won senior Rotax. I'm just not built for that, and I had to accept that. So I did the next best thing that I could in my category that I raced. So I did what I could. I beat everyone I was put up against in that. So there's nothing more satisfying than winning that, and winning it back to back in different in conditions and years was great.
And final question then, question of the day: if you could go back and race in any class, any Kartmasters in any class, which would you race and why?
I think a couple of years before that, I wasn't present. As I said, I had a 3 or 4 year gap, but certainly when like Ardigo and Gary Catt, in Formula A again, if I was, I've been nowhere near their level, but I'd have loved to have been on the same grid, having to go against those guys. And on the flip side, now, whilst I'm the other side of the fence, and I've got no intention of getting in a kart again. I think the standard's really high. I think it's really, really high. Everyone's putting so much effort in, and drivers are out every week. So it'd be great to be able to compete at this level. And 20 years ago, I have my time again. But but I think from a personal point of view, 2 or 3 years before, when all the European proper international drivers did the Formula A, that looked cool.
Yeah, it's been quite a popular answer actually. Check all the answers out on all the videos that we're posting up. But Dan, I know you've got lots of debriefs to do. We'll let you get off. But thank you very much for joining us here in the live lounge, and best of luck tomorrow.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Cheers.